Friends, thank you very much for joining us today. If you don't know me, I'm Dr. Ian Paul, and I'm joined today by my friend, Dr. Peter Walker. Peter, very nice to see you.
Lovely to be with you, Ian. I've often wanted to be with you on such an occasion, and now I've got the chance.
You have indeed. Fame and fortune at last. Now, Peter, the reason we're making this short video is because you and I are planning a trip together next year, aren't we?
What's not to like? Yes, it's quite exciting. Next June, we're planning to go out to modern Turkey and Greece and see the the places associated with Paul and John the Divine.
John the Divine, who wrote the Book of Revelation. Yep.
That's right.
We won't get into a debate about authorship and who he was.
Not at this point.
No, indeed. Now, is it worth just saying what the exact dates are?
The exact dates, yes, good question. Sunday, the 15th of June, 2025, till Tuesday, the 24th. So that's basically the third week of June for a 9 or 10-day trip. We fly into Turkey to begin with and go to land at Izmir Airport, which is ancient Smyrna, which is one of the 7 churches associated with the Book of Revelation. We spend a few days there on the landmass of modern Turkey, going around those 7 churches. Then we get on a cruise. It's not a vast cruise line or anything, but it's the regular weekly ferry, if you like, which goes around between Greece and some of the islands. And that gives us an opportunity to sail out of Kushadasi near Ephesus and go down to Patmos, which is the place obviously associated with the revelation to St. John the Divine. Beautiful island. We'll be there in the late afternoon, 4 o'clock or so, and be able to see the monastery as well as a place where, by tradition, the revelation was given to St. John. Then we go down to Crete, also associated with the ministry of St. Paul and Titus. And then we come up to Athens eventually via Santorini, which is a beautiful island. And then we have 48 hours in Greece, enjoying Athens and, of course, Corinth. So we're seeing, I can't remember quite how many, is it 11 different biblical sites from the New Testament, all in the space of those 9 or 10 days. It's a really action-packed linking together places that are familiar to us from the pages of the New Testament.
Now, Peter, that sounds like a fantastic holiday. Beautiful places, lovely climate, trips, sights to see, lovely islands. But actually, the purpose of the trip is a little bit more than just giving people a good holiday, isn't it?
Sure. I mean, it will be a good holiday. It's summer, it's Aegean, it's a beautiful time of year in a beautiful part of the world. I think one of my favourite parts of the world. And we're meant to have fun together, by the way, on these things. We are meant to have some fun. But yes, there is. You could think of it as a study tour. That doesn't sound a little bit too heavy. But we go as interested and Christian people, thinking, well, what can we learn about from the pages of the New Testament about these places? In particular, what can we learn more about the biblical text, what it was actually saying? So can we begin to hear the Book of Revelation in its original context, or begin to think about what it was like to read 1 Corinthians for the first time if you were resident in Corinth? And what I think, above all, I see in leading such tours, whether they go to the Holy Land or on this occasion going to Greece and Turkey, is to try and spark and fill our imaginations with historically verifiable imagination, with geographically inspired imagination. And somehow it enables us to read the New Testament not just as it's an authoritative text or it's a historical text, but as a living, creative, ordinary text in which ordinary people were doing extraordinary things because of their faith in Jesus. And we can connect with them sort of as people to people. And that's a really important thing. And it's amazing how when you lead these tours, as I've done for a few years, different sparks will go off at different moments in different people's lives, in their journey rather. They'll have an aha moment, and suddenly something will fall into place, either with their own personal faith story, or perhaps in their reading of the New Testament, suddenly something that never made sense before, suddenly, oh, well, of course, it's obvious. But only when you see the place can you actually see why that's the case.
Yeah. Now, you allude to the fact that you've done these tours before. You're actually quite an experienced tour leader, but also you've seen the impact that it has on people who come on the tour, and all sorts of people have been on tours with you before.
Yeah, that's right. It is a lovely thing how, in this sense, these tours or these pilgrimages are quite an equalizer. You don't have to be the most academic person or the least academic person, or been a Christian for many years or for not many years. Actually, all such people can actually have some great moments of insight, as well as also what we learn together. Let's not think that it's just us on our own. Actually, the conversations, just the informal bus conversations you can have, can actually be life-changing. And some, when pennies begin to drop in people's minds, and actually just being away from our own normal everyday environment, but on a tour which has a spiritual Christian component. Well, it's not like going to a monastery for a silent retreat, but it's a bit of intentional time when you might encounter the Lord in new ways.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you talk about the way this transforms people and brings faith alive. I mean, I lived in Israel in my year before going to university, and I remember the profound experience of actually being in the hills of Galilee and then opening the New Testament and reading about Jesus climbing and sitting on a hill. And I remember as the dawn broke, actually picturing him on one of those hills. And I've also been on a couple of study tours of Israel. And then a few years ago, I did a study tour of the 7 cities in the book of Revelation, but also 1 or 2 other sites. I mean, another one that was very important for me was a place called Aphrodisias, which we're going to be visiting. Yeah. And I found that really fascinating because it communicated 2 things, I think. One for me was what's generally called the material culture of the environment. You can see the importance of statuary and inscriptions in really shaping people's lives. And I think the other thing that really struck me as well was inhabiting that world where, for example, the way that Roman power was communicated. You know, in Aphrodisias, you see statues with images of Rome subjugating figures that represent the nations that they've conquered. And that was a very vivid reminder about, you know, the raw power of Rome in expressed in material culture.
Yeah. Well, life then was 3-dimensional, and it is now. It's never 2-dimensional. And when we read the text of the Bible, we often, because it's a text, we often can read it flatly, non-imaginatively, in kind of 2 dimensions. Suddenly now you're seeing the surrounding culture coming up, and it helps you to think of ordinary people trying to walk through that culture whilst still honouring Christ. Yeah.
Now, you've mentioned that different kinds of people come. Who is this trip suitable for? Is it for scholars? Is it for clergy? Who is it for? Who would be interested?
Well, both of the above and more. Yes, you and I are involved in something called the Tyndale Fellowship, and we perhaps conceived this idea originally partly with such people in mind, people perhaps who've never been to these lands of the Bible before, yet they're studying this professionally or for research purposes. And what an opportunity for them to actually experience this 3-dimensional reality, which you and I have experienced. Yep. What an opportunity for them to be able to consider the biblical text in its original context. But I hope you and I are not narrow academics, are we? And I hope we are pastor teachers. I hope we are people who have wanted to communicate the faith in our professional life to people who are in frontline ministry. I think we know what it is to have our feet on the ground. And so we'd really love to encourage those who are in similar frontline ministry. That's clergy and preaching ministry. How will you preach Corinthians differently?
Or lay readers as well?
Yeah, in 2 to 3 differently. So that's an issue. And then there are ordinary, well-intentioned Christian believers, you know, who are not studying academically or want to go on a study tour in the narrow sense of the word, who are just going to find the pages of their New Testament come alive. And if they're believers in Christ, to find their faith in Jesus come alive. And by the way, I always say to my students, and I hope you say them to yours, there's no such thing as a stupid question, only a stupid answer.
Absolutely.
So we'll all be learning tons of things together. I'd never go on a tour, perhaps I'd never give a lecture without myself learning something from the people I'm talking to. And it's when you and I perhaps are talking, we suddenly see something new.
Absolutely.
That the whole classroom, as it were, even though they're in Turkey, also learn something new because they can see that we're learning as well. So it's going to be a group learning experience, and all kinds of people can access that.
I love your phrase pastor teacher because, of course, both you and I are ordained in the Church of England, but both of us have also been involved in academic teaching. And many people will know that I've written the Tyndale commentary on the book of Revelation, if I can get that in focus. And we'll be drawing on that in background. But again, this is a commentary which is intended to be accessible as well as to be well-rooted in scholarship. And I know you've also written and published, and you particularly published on the whole question of touring and traveling, haven't you?
Yeah, well, I've done stuff on pilgrimage to the Holy Land and in the Steps of Jesus. The one relevant for this particular trip is in the Steps of St. Paul. And this gives you the archaeology of all the sites, but it also, in each chapter, gives you not just the archaeology in the second part, but gives you the story of Paul. And some people have read it who are not academic at all, and they say, "Oh, I didn't really like St. Paul, but now I've read your book, I realise he was an ordinary human guy, wasn't he?" And it's got one page of theology on about page 35. Otherwise, it's just an analysis of what it's like to be trying to create and run and manage a multinational, international, multi-ethnic community, which has never been done before, and doing without email or telephone. How do you do it? Impossible.
Indeed.
Except Jesus led him. So I think it gives us an opportunity to see Paul as a human being managing a very complex operation and how he did things. And so your text is an actual commentary as such, and that's great. Yes. Mine is a more kind of historical, historically rooted, imaginative portrait of Paul.
Well, Peter, thank you very much. That's really fascinating. Friends, I hope that's whetted your appetite. I have to say, every time I think about this trip, I myself, I'm really, really excited about it. I'm really excited to be going with Peter because he'll bring different insights than the insights I'll bring. And as you can see, he's an experienced guide in this sort of thing. We will also have local guides on the trip. And all the details can be found on my website. I'll put a link below this video. And so you can click there. You can download a brochure with all the details, with the itinerary, all about who we are as well, and about what the trip aims to do. And there's also there a booking form. And we really look forward to seeing you next June and hope that you can join us. Peter, I look forward to the trip with you as well. Thanks very much for joining me.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to see everyone. Bye now.